Yes, sir, please.
Over to you, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, my dear research scholar friends. Especially thanks to Subal Babu, with whom I am acquainted. Your organization, name of your organization is Odisha Research Scholar for Social Justice. So name signifies very importance, social justice. So we have to also analyze budget in that angle, whether there is social justice or not in budget. Anyway, particularly as a research scholar, as a student of economics or sociology or other subject, social science, it is important how you want to think and analyze any economics matter, not only just budget. Everything can be analyzed in a pro-ruling class angle or a pro-people angle. But as a researcher, when out of 1 lakh people, if 99,999 tell one thing, a researcher, a genuine researcher should think independently. He should not be influenced by others. He should think in his mind about the impact of this policy or anything else. Particularly today there is a trend, serious trend, to interpret everything in a pro-ruling class angle, pro-established angle instead of a pro-people angle. We must remember that Mahatma Gandhi had told that the impact of a policy should touch the most vulnerable person of the society. That means if out of 1 lakh people, 99,999 still benefited, if one is not benefited, still we must speak about that one people. I am giving another example. I always give this example. For example, in Cuttack, one day you go to Balijatra, on the same day you came to SCB Medical College Hospital. You saw how people are enjoying in Balijatra, but you saw how people are suffering, how attendants are undergoing excruciating pain, how they are unable to purchase medicine. You saw this. As a researcher, as a writer, as an intellectual, as an academician, you have to think about the problems those who facing in the hospital. Not you have to analyze how people are enjoying in Balijatra. It is not question. Sometimes people question the integrity of a writer when they interpret a pro-people. It is not question a writer should support or oppose a political party. As an intellectual writer or a columnist, you should not support or oppose any party. But you should always interpret it in pro-people angle. In the last 24 years since I started writing, I have written more than 2,000 articles, both English and Odia till today. I have not supported any political party or I have not opposed any political party, but I have interpreted decision, economic policy, everything in a pro-people angle, in a pro-progressive angle. So it may go against sometimes the establishment ruling class, because when the ruling class take decision, especially they try to cater to those sections of the society who will help them to retain their power. And it is obviously rich, corporate, finance capital, investors, their interests are protected. It is not question who is ruling today or who will rule tomorrow or who was ruling in the past. Question is thing to interpret a pro-people angle. Another, I will give an example. You are going to a doctor. A patient is went to doctor. Suppose he has some problem. He has a heart problem. Doctor will examine and write the prescription. He will not write your eye is good, your nose is good, your hair is good, your leg is good, your finger is good. But he will point out where there is a problem in your body, which part of your body is affected. So he will write, and accordingly he will prescribe for test or write medicine. Similarly, a budget cannot be entirely good or entirely bad also. If one tells that a budget is totally bad, it is absolutely wrong. When the size of the budget is 53,000 crores, 53 lakh crores, how can it be bad? But we have to interpret how the budget take the interest of vulnerable section, middle class people, how the social justice is uphold. That is important. So in the last 24 years, I have interpreted in that way pro-people angle, and today also I will interpret in a pro-people angle. First, should be known to the researcher, and researchers should always have an independent mentality, critical thinking. They should not just read the headlines and give statement that may fetch a temporary benefit, but your depth will not increase, your knowledge will not increase, your research. Why will you research? What for research? The headline is sufficient. So researchers should think, analyze critically, which this will help to sustain his knowledge for the long times. Temporary phase always not possible, should be welcome. Now coming to budget. This time Finance Minister Nirmala Sitaram has presented his budget. This is the 9th budget of her time. And she has presented consecutive 9 times, and only Morarji Desai has presented a budget 10 times. But Morarji Desai has not presented a budget consecutively. He has presented from 1959 to 1964, and again 1966, 67 to 1969. And Chidambaram and Pranab Mukherjee also have presented a budget 8 times. Budget is not just income and expenditure of a public authority or government. It shows how the government wants to allocate the resources, it wants to raise the revenue, how it wants, in which sector it wants to give priority, how it to provide the social justice, how it act to the directory principle of state policy, how it want to reduce inequality, poverty, starvation, unemployment, how it want to tax the richer section of the society and generate more resources and spend for the poorer section of the society. This budget should be interpreted in that angle. Nobody should come straight without reading the budget today when you are telling budget is good, budget is so and so. That is not a way of researchers should address a budget. They should have a serious analysis what I want and what I have learned from my college days. So budget is important. Budget is part of a fiscal policy. We have a fiscal policy, monetary policy, exchange rate policy. Monetary policy deals with the credit aspect, deposit aspect, exchange rate policy with exchange ratio. I am not going to all that aspect. That is different thing. Fiscal budget is a part of fiscal policy which deal income, expenditure along with the public debt. There are also various indicators that make the help to analyze the budget. What is the total expenditure? What is the total revenue received? What is the revenue generated through tax? What is the revenue generated through not tax revenue? How much is borrowed? How much is the fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, and primary deficit? You know all these deficit, but those who want to know or are watching this program, others than economic student. Fiscal deficit means excess of expenditure over non-borrowed receipt. Sometimes people expenditure minus receipt say no, non-borrowed receipt. borrower excess of expenditure over non-borrower receipt. Similarly, fiscal deficit shows how much government is going to borrow. Revenue deficit means excess of revenue expenditure over revenue receipt. This shows whether borrowing is spent in creating asset or for day-to-day activities like paying interest or salary and so on and so. There is also another term, effective revenue deficit. The amount of the revenue deficit that create a asset is excluded to derive the term effective revenue deficit. Another term is primary deficit. Primary deficit means fiscal deficit minus interest payment. Interest payment not this year current on the budget, the year budget is presented. Interest payment of the previous year, that is primary deficit. So now when we come to the analyzed budget, what was the views of finance minister? That is the important thing. Finance minister says threefold strategy. What is threefold strategy? Or three kartavya, three duty. One is accelerating and sustaining economic growth, fulfilling people's aspiration, one thing, and enhancing their capacity. Second is aligning policies with the vision of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas. Third thing is she has also proposed the prosperous and inclusive economy. She has spoken many things. So we have to analyze whether budget will lead to the prosperous or an inclusive economy. She has also told that rhetoric, there is no rhetoric, there is no self-patting, but actually I believe there is more self-patting than reality. We will analyze all these aspects. She has also talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat, significant reduction of poverty, all these things she has spoken. She has also spoken about GST reform, around 350 reforms. So we will go directly to the topic. First, we have to see the size of a budget, expenditure. Normally, everything increases in absolute term or nominal terms. Everything increases in absolute term or nominal terms. Because even inflation lead to rise. For example, 10 years back you are getting 50,000 salary. Now you might be getting 75,000 salary. When the first budget was presented in 1951 and 52, at that time budget size was 353 crore only. GDP was around 10,000 crores. Now GDP is around 4.1 trillion dollar. And a budget size is more than 53 lakh crores. It is increasing. There are various reasons, but one of the main reasons is also inflation. And the size of a budget should increase as a proportion to rise of a nominal GDP. You must know what is nominal GDP because you are a PhD scholar from big institution. Real GDP plus inflation measured by price reflator is in nominal GDP. That means nominal GDP minus inflation. Inflation is considered by price deflator, not other price. But now it is measured by wholesale price deflator. Leads to the real GDP. So budget size should to increase equivalent or more than the nominal GDP estimated or projected in the year the budget is presented. Now let us come what has happened. In 2025 and 26, nominal GDP was estimated to rise 10.1%. With the price deflator that takes into account inflation, it was estimated 2.3 to 3.8%. And a real GDP was estimated to 6.3 to 6.8%. But what has happened in the revised estimate while presenting budget? In 2025 and 26, real GDP grew more, 7.4%. But nominal GDP, instead of 10.1%, it became 8%. That means inflation is only 0.6% as per price deflator. That is why GDP calculation is wrong. It is many are telling, including IMF, that GDP calculation in India is doubtful. How can be inflation will be so low by whatever index that may be? When nominal GDP does not increase, then size of a budget may not increase accordingly. Now, let us come to this year, current 2026 and 27 on which budget is presented. This budget envisages the nominal GDP growth of 10%. And a real GDP growth of 6.8% to 2%. But last year real GDP was 7.4%. Now, what was the size of a budget previous year? Previous year, the size of a budget was 50.65 lakh crores. Previous year, size of a budget was 56.65 lakh crores. This year budget size is 53.47 lakh crores. If you think in relation to the previous budget, the increase is only 5.5% when nominal GDP is estimated to be 10%. That means nominal GDP will rise 10%, but budget size in nominal term will increase only 5.5%. That means budget is contractionary, not expansionary. That we must understand. Budget should be interpreted like this. What is more important thing as a scholar we must understand? That size of in 2025 and 26, budget has shrunk in the revised estimated by 1.04 lakh crores. That when budget was estimated 50.65 lakh crores, in the revised estimate it has shrunk by 1.04 lakh crores. When revised estimate size of budget shrink, that means somewhere expenditure would have been cut. At least in revised estimate, size projected first estimate should be, budgeted estimate should be maintained or should increase. It should not shrink. So when more than 1 lakh crore has been cut in the revised estimate, that means somewhere it has been affected. That we must understand. So budget is supposed to be called as contractionary because it does not rise in tandem with the rise of nominal GDP. Next katha we will come. Government always, everybody tells that budget size is increasing so much, or in the last 10 years budget has size increasing. But we have to compare, everything is increasing. Our salary is increasing, wage is increasing in nominal term, everything is increasing. We have to compare the size of budget as percentage of GDP in our country and in other country also. That is important. Our budget size as percentage of GDP is 13.6% in 2026 and 27. 13.6%. In 2022 and 23, it was 15.6%. Last year, it was in revised estimate, it was 13.9%. Average for many years, it is around 15%. So, size of budget as percentage of GDP, nominal GDP, is 13.6%. So, it is declining as percentage of nominal GDP. That is important thing we must understand as a researcher. Now, we must compare when ruling class takes pride or self-patting. We must compare our budget size as percentage of GDP compared to other countries. What is the other countries that we must understand? If we take into consider other country, in our country, if we both central and state budget is taken together as percentage of GDP, it is around 28.38 of GDP. In Euro area, it is 49.5%. You go through Google and IMF, World Bank, you can get all these statistics. 57.17% in France. 56.56% in Italy, 48.4% in Germany, 48.4% in Spain, 39.1% in Japan and UK, Great Britain, 37.92% in USA, and it is 24% to 24-25% in India. I am not blaming any government, this government or past government. This trend is continuing when we are telling that it will address the poverty, hunger, starvation, and it will help inclusive growth, provide social justice, and there is a unprecedented development in the last 10 years. Then what statistics say? Researchers should point out to examine with the statistics. Those, even today, statistics are manipulated. So our size of a budget, both central and state, is much less compared to many top countries. That is the important thing. Next, we will come to the revenue aspect. We have collection from tax revenue, non-tax revenue. Tax revenue is important. We have also, that is revenue received. We have also capital received. That includes also borrowing, recovery of loans, disinvestment, so and so. So both are combined together. Capital received, total revenue received is around 33.42 lakh crores. When budget size is 53 lakh crore, total received is 33.42 lakh crores. So leading to borrowing around 15 to 16 lakh crores. That's important thing. Similarly, 33.42 lakh crore was last year. This year, total received is 35.33 lakh crores. In 2025 and 26 budget, total received was estimated, revenue received 33.42 lakh crore, but in revised estimate, again it has come down to 34.20 lakh crores. I am not going to absolute number. What is important? generating resources is more important and resorting to less borrowing is important. Borrowing is not bad, but borrowing should be within the capacity and borrowing should not be out of control. Every country borrows. Many countries also have a much more debt than India, but that is sometimes it argues. America has debt around 130% of our GDP. I will go to that chapter, debt chapter. But their country is different from our country. They have the reserve currency, they can print the currency, so they can borrow at their will, which we cannot do. So we cannot be compared. But my point of view is that anybody made a minister, he can spend the way she or he wants. Important thing is how you are generating resources. What is the tax GDP ratio? Nothing is evaluated in absolute term. Everything is evaluated in real term or as percentage of GDP. In state government, it is as percentage of GST. Inflation must be taken into consideration. Our tax GDP ratio is revolving around 10 to 11 or to maximum 12% for long years. In every regime, it is not increasing. This year, it has calmed down. For example, tax GDP ratio was 11.5% in 2013-4. In 2025 and 26, it was 11.4%. And in 2026-27, it is estimated to decline to the 11.2%. That means tax as percentage of a GDP is declining. Tax as percent of a GDP is declining. If we compare to other countries, this is central tax. If central tax plus a state tax as percentage of a GDP is around 17 to 18% in India. In other countries, it is in OECD countries, it is 35%. Some countries 40%, even 50%. That means when your size of a cake is not increasing as proportionate to of a growth or a GDP, that means you are stagnating as an entire economy. So our economy, if measured in that term, there is no growth in tax revenue, size of budget as percentage of a GDP. So how can you tell that everything is good? I am not telling that there is nothing good. There is also, I have told primarily, when 53 lakh crores will be spent, obviously everything cannot be bad. And when you analyze, you have to analyze in this way. For example, if you analyze any specific scheme, then you can tell that this scheme is good, this scheme is bad, or that is a different thing, or this scheme is helpful. But when you analyze the entire budget, you have to analyze in this way. So revenue has also shrunk as percentage of GDP. What is another important thing? It was told in 2019 and 20 when corporate tax was cut. When corporate tax was cut by massive margin, it was told that will lead to private investment. But private investment has declined, not increased. And corporate have a huge savings. Corporate savings has grown because they are not able to invest. Their profit as a percentage of GDP is also increased. But their investment as a percentage of GDP is declining. Why declining? Due to reduction of corporate tax, their profit has increased because their tax liability has decreased. But investment is not growing because there is a lack of demand for goods and services. There is a lack of demand, but because people have not purchasing power, people have not salary, people have not that much of income to purchase the commodities. So that is why when there is no demand for goods or services, then one cannot produce these goods and services. Why he will produce? So that is why corporate in private investment has not gone up, has a decline. That is one aspect. But important aspect was once upon time, tax, personal income tax revenue generated through corporate tax was much more higher than the revenue generated through the income tax. Revenue generated through income tax. But in the last few years, particularly even this year, revenue generated through income tax is higher than the revenue generated through the corporate tax. For example, revenue generated through income tax is 21% of our total budget. In case of a corporate tax, it is 18%. That means the burden of a tax is falling on the income taxpayer rather than corporate. That we must understand. Another important thing is that when there is tax GDP ratio is declining, despite the government getting huge dividend from the RBI, public sector banks and public sectors. From RBI, it will get dividend around 3 lakh crores, not less than 3 lakh crores. Earlier, there was no so huge dividend from the RBI. Despite getting huge dividend, tax GDP ratio is not increasing. By contrast, government has reduced the minimum alternative tax from 15% to 14% for the benefit of the corporate. Similarly, government has a plan to raise the 80,000 crores by way of disinvestment and monetization. This is one aspect. Demonetization, disinvestment is a debatable topic. I am not against the private sector because private sector also, public sector plays commanding height of the economy. It generates a profit. It cater to interest of the masses. It take care of people's interest. Private sector take care of more profit. But private sector, our mixed economy, private sector plays also an important role. So anybody should not ignore the importance of private sector. If he ignore, that is wrong. But what I object, that same facility should be given to public sector, private sector. For example, private sector, telecom sector were allowed 4G, where BSNL was not allowed. Rules are framed to suit the private sector, even not private sector entirely. Few private sectors, their share is manipulated and they become rich by every day. Public sector is not treated with the same facility, sometimes it is treated with a distance. And disinvestment, and in the economic survey, it has been also that the concept of public sector will change. For example, in past, it was until if in a public sector share of a government is 51% or more, then it is considered a government control. It is a public sector government, under government. In economic survey say that they want to reduce it to 26%. Even government share is 26% or more, then it is considered public sector. That means if they want to sell the share of the public sector. By selling the share of public sector, You also reduce the scope of getting a dividend from the public sector. One. Second thing is that public monopoly is not dangerous, where private monopoly is always dangerous. If the private monopoly grow, they will monopolize profit market and raise the price of commodities services as they desire. Public sector will not do this. Further, presence of a public sector helps to control the private sector and it prevents the exploitation of the private sector. So public sector, any attempt to weaken the public sector will harm the vulnerable section of the society, and in future course of the economy, power of the economy will transfer to the richer and the corporate sector. Our resources will be transferred to the richer section of the society, corporate section of society by indirect way. So a large amount generating more than 80,000 crores by way for disinvestment, reducing the minimum alternative tax does not pretend that budget is pro-people, pro-ruling class, rather budget cater to the interest of the corporate classes, what I feel. Next important thing, debt GDP ratio, fiscal deficit. First, we must understand borrowing is not bad. Everybody, if you want to create asset, you have to borrow. We cannot build a house without borrowing. We cannot provide much higher education without borrowing to children. Borrowing is not bad, but its repayment capacity should be within one's capacity. Second thing, it should be within one capacity borrowing amount. But excessive borrowing beyond capacity is dangerous for in case of individual and in case of nation. That is why same government in past, starting from Odia PhD, Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act, they are formed. According to them, or according to various finance commission, fiscal deficit excess of expenditure over non-borrower received should be 3% or maximum 3.5% of a GDP. Central government debt should be 40 to 45%, while state government debt should be 20 to 20%. That means in both central and state combined together, it should be 60 to 65% of a GDP. They were trying for the same process, but in Corona time, there was a huge resources crunch. At that time, fiscal deficit grew to around 9.2% of a GDP. Yes, at that time it was necessary to generate resources for the betterment of the society. There was nothing wrong in borrowing heavily or to have fiscal deficit. They have made a plan to reduce the fiscal deficit, and they have decided that the fiscal deficit will be 2026 and 27, it will be around 4.3% of GDP. I am not concerned about the fiscal deficit, whether it is 4.3% or 2% or 8% or 9%. This is immaterial. The matter most what is how much you are borrowing and whether borrowing amount is helping in increasing GDP. So what matter most, not fiscal deficit, debt as percent of GDP or entire liabilities as percentage of GDP. Because if you borrow, if you properly invest, automatically GDP will increase. When GDP will increase, then as percentage of GDP, automatically debt will remain controlled. If debt is not debt as percent of GDP or a total liability, debt other liability included total liability as percent of GDP is increasing, then that means borrowing is not used productively, Rather, it is used to give a concession to poorer, richer section of the society, corporate section society. What was our position? Today, in 2013-14, total central debt was 50.5%. State was around 22%, around 22.3%. So in total, it was 72%, 72.8% of GDP was central and state in 2013-14. Sometimes the ruling class tell our size of budget has increased, our expenditure has increased. Opposition said that your budget, your debt has it was 55 lakh crores in 2013. It is now 205 lakh crores. These were not it is evaluated. Everything increases nominal form, but as a student of researcher, we have to analyze as percentage of GDP. So as percentage of GDP, central debt was 50.5% of in 2013-4 and state was 22.3%. What is now present situation? In the last year, it is around 50.52% central debt as percentage of GDP, state is around 29.2%. It amounts to be 84.4%. That means 72.8% to 84.4% is a big jump in debt as percentage of GDP, both central and state combined together. That means money borrowed as not spent creating asset or contributing to the growth, and particularly even growth is not inclusive today. In other countries, USA it is debt GDP ratio 130%. Japan is more than 200%. Many countries big countries have a debt GDP ratio is huge. But our capability is maximum central and state, it should be 65%. Because our country is a poor country, a lower middle income country. We have not become a middle income, upper middle income, high income. Lower middle income country, upper income, high income is far away. America per capita income is $84,000. Our per capita income is $2,800 to $2,900. Our position in the per capita income is 136. So we cannot compare because they have a reserve currency. Their international trade is done their currency. They can print their currency. So those who are arguing that we should compare with them, this is a wrong thing. So debt is gradually becoming out of control. Most important, you must evaluate what is the interest payment as a percentage of a total revenue received. And it is around 37%. So it is increasing. It should be 25%. It is increasing. If we measure revenue received is spent on interest payment, that means you are borrowing heavily to spend day-to-day expenditure. That is the important thing we must understand. How the situation fiscal problem is gradually increasing. We are least concerned about fiscal deficit, but we are concerned interest payment as a percentage of our total revenue received, and the total liabilities as a percent of GDP, which is increasing. That is a not good sign. That must be controlled. Now, important sector. We should evaluate expenditure important sector. We should not go each and sector because there is a huge expenditure different sector. So nobody can say that everything is bad. We can go social sector, including that include education, health. Other are also rural development. We can also think of agriculture. What is our social sector? Social sector expenditure in India, also in this budget, central government as percentage of GDP, it is 2.5%. Both the central and state combined together, it is 7.9%. If you take a last year figure, or around say 8%. Overall, big countries, it is around social sector expenditure is 20% of GDP. What are the figures says in other countries? For example, it is the social sector expenditure as percentage of GDP, both center and state, our it is 8%. In other countries, France is 31.1%. Italy is 27.6%. Finland is 29.6%. Spain is 28.1%. Germany is 28.4%. Denmark is 29.2%. Canada is 24.9%. Japan is 22.3%. UK is 20.5%. USA is 18.2%. Korea is 10.5%. Then social expenditure as percentage of GDP is so low. When social expenditure as percentage of GDP is so low, that means our social sector are affected. I am not telling this is 10 is this year. That means social sector, if he as percent of GDP is so low in our country, that means poorer section of the society are more affected. That we must understand, which may not be visible to always. What are the important part of a social sector? Education, health is the primary sector. Nobel laureate Amartya Sen had told, India is limping backward due to poor expenditure in health and education. Always I give importance that I advocate always, there is no meaning of having so many schemes while making the education health costlier. If government will provide health and education free or at cheaper rate, automatically purchasing power of the people will increase. Automatically there will be inequality. For example, somebody has a huge money. He can send his children to the private medical college. He will come out a doctor. If someone has no money, he cannot send his children to private medical college or a private engineering college or a private management college. That means here one is deprived from his legitimate right. That means as far as health is concerned, health expenditure is in India is one of the lowest in the world. It is 1.3% of GDP, both central and state. Around Indian health sector is most privatized. Most of a school, college, there is no teachers, lecturers. Without study on social science, human life will life is changed. Professional education is something different. Arts is a very important part of our life. So when education and health is not is becoming costlier, that means it is the main reason for the increasing inequality. Around 1 year, 5 crores people were dragged into the poverty line because of pocket expenditure in health. When you send your children to the public school, you have to immediately spend 50,000. I am not telling that there is need for private school or not. I am not telling that. What I am telling that children should be provided free education, whether it is a private school or a government school, whatever school. Free education or at a cheaper rate, that will increase the disposable income. When people spend their huge income, health, education, they cut down other expenditure, basic necessities. They cut down the expenditure they are supposed to spend on their family, parents. That is not visible to everybody. Other expenditure are cut. Even sometimes people do not subscribe a newspaper. to spend money in some other way. Quality of life declines. So that we have to stress. If we come to the expenditure, central government expenditure on education as percent of GDP, it was 0.55% in 2014 and 15. It has declined to 0.41% in 2023-24 and to 0.3% 2025-26, and it is estimated to be 0.35% in 26-27. Both central and state combined together education expenditure varies from 3 to 4% of GDP. Kothari Commission has recommended it should be 6%. Globally average it is 4.4%. Many countries it is huge. So education needs huge boost up. Education should be provided at cheaper rate or free of cost. Similarly, health expenditure has also declined. It was a central government, it was around 0.41% of GDP in 2020-21. It has a decline to 0.2% in 2024 and 25. And it is continued to be similar way. Both center and state together health expenditure is around 1.35% of our GDP. In the world average it is 6%. Many countries have a 10-12% also. So health expenditure, education expenditure should be increased. Similarly, social welfare, which is important for the poorer section of our society and pensioners, other adults, that is social expenditure has been also caught in the revised estimate of last 2026 budget. It has marginally increased. Similarly, in agriculture there is marginal increase. Rural development, there is a good increase in rural development expenditure, good amount. I am not going to figure to make you more. But rural expenditure has been caught in the revised estimate of 2025 and 26 budget. That is the important thing. Railway budget, in railway revenue generated in freight, mostly it is 2/3 of revenue. It is declining. And other revenue has also declined. That is a matter of concern. So now, another important aspect also, devolution of fund to the state government. That is the important aspect. Because state government spends around what is the total expenditure done by center and state combined together, if it added. Center spend around 32%, around I am telling, state around 68%. But revenue generation capacity state is limited 135% around exactly, that may be vary. But center has more revenue generating capacity. State, after imposition of GST, state capacity has been to generate revenue has been reduced. That is why they are reluctant to include the petroleum product in the GST, because they will lose revenue and they do not have the raise capacity. So center has to allocate fund by Finance Commission recommend and grant in aid also. Finance Commission recommend in every 5 years they recommend how the fund will be, divisible fund will be distributed between the center and state. And in the 14th Finance Commission, it was decided to raise the divisible fund to share of the state from 32% to 42%. It was decided. Again, when Jammu Kashmir was formed, it is reduced to 41%. But what is truth? That is important, we must as a researcher know. That is reduced to around 37%, I think. Why this is reducing? Because center, again when taken into consider the cess and surcharges, it is declining further. It is not more than 35%. Center generate a huge resources from cess and surcharges. And cess and surcharges do not form the divisible fund. State the share center does not give to state from this divisible fund collected from center and from cess and surcharges. What was the amount? It was around 2024 and 25. The amount was 5.38 lakh crores. And this year, 2026 and 27, the amount is estimated to be 4.6 lakh crores. That means out from cess and surcharges, center will collect 4.6 lakh per crore. It is less than previous year because there is reason, because they will not raise the surcharge, cess, GST compensation. Because when GST was implemented, state had to lose. There was a decision that the GST compensation will generate revenue that will be distributed to the state that incur losses. So that has been eliminated. So in 2026, it is estimated 4.64 lakh crores will be generated out of cess and surcharge, which will not form the divisible pools. So that is why the decision of 42% that it will be given to state out of divisible fund, it is actually states are getting less than 35%. So it is, that means how much is giving, that is one matter. But this is where the state are deprived of the resources. And even state did not get the help in when it is necessary. And particularly Odisha, the share of Odisha in the divisible fund, it is from 12th Finance Commission, it is gradually declining. It was 12th Finance Commission, it was 5.12%. It is now around 4.7 exactly. That may be vary, 4.70% it will be around, or 4.68%. That is declining. So Odisha is not getting adequate share. Odisha might get some other way or not, that is another thing debatable. So if we analyze in budget, there is another important thing. Capital expenditure has increased by huge amount. It is told around 12.1 lakh crores will be spent. That is a welcome feature. I am not objecting this. But another problem is that cost overrun is around 5 lakh crores. Cost overrun means, for example, you have a plan to build a house 3 years ago. And you have a plan that the expenditure will be 50 lakh crores. After 3 years, you find that expenditure will be, instead of 50 lakh crores, your expenditure has gone up to 55 lakh crores. That means cost overrun is 5 lakh crores. 5 lakh, 50 lakh, 5 lakh. Similarly, in case of government, this infrastructure project cost overrun in last few years, it has gone up to more than 5 lakh crores. 5 lakh crores. That is the important thing. That means they have to spend more money. So we will analyze in the overall budget, where is the inclusiveness? I am not telling the budget is bad like others. But my question is that whether problem is addressed. What is the problem today? Our assets, household debt has increased 102% from 2019 to 2024 or 25, whereas the household debt has increased around 107%. Household asset has increased around 47%. They are very figures. Household financial liabilities has increased from 3.2% to 6.4%. Financial savings, which provides money, bank to lend to government or corporate or people, is declining. Financial saving include bank, insurance, postal, all these things. financial savings once upon time in 2009-10 it was 12.10%. It has declined to 5% to 6% vary, and in 2022-23 it was 5.1%, which was for decade low. Today bank have no adequate money to lend deposit. That is a crisis. What is important? Our economy is a savings economy. Savings leads to investment. Investment leads to growth, and our investment is declining. So when savings is declining, there is a problem. What should be the government plan? Government should incentivize savings. Today, in new tax schemes, we do not get rebate from savings. Our maturity value is tax. Interest is tax. We pay tax. Indirect tax we pay heavily. Indirect tax is regressive because it taxes the rich and poor at the same rate. But tax concession is given to richer section of society. As per this budget, tax raised but tax not collected is around 38.4 lakh crores. Bank loan written up in the last 10 years, it is around 16.6 lakh crore, out of which only 16% has been recovered. Who are these beneficiaries? That means the system is rigged in favor of the rich. System is supporting the richer section, the corporate section of the society. When they are enjoying a luxurious life, when they are leading, accumulating wealth because of rise in the stock market, because they are capable of keeping their money in the tax haven, where money is identity is kept secret, where they do not have to pay taxes. They have avenues to hide their tax. They have the scope to evade tax. They have a scope to pay lower tax. But middle class or lower middle class have to pay the huge tax. By this way, the voice of a vulnerable section, middle class people is squeezed, where the benefit is going to the richer section of the society. 1% of the population enjoy the 40.5% of national wealth. 1% of population enjoy the 21.8% of national income. By contrast, 50% of the poorest lower section of the society, or 50% of the Indians enjoys only 15.4% of national income and 6.4% of national wealth. So the gap is not, I am telling in India, it is widening in all over the world. Because the tax rebate is given to richer section of society, tax evasion is legalized, the market in the name of marketing, economic crony capitalism is growing, richer section of the society is controlling the economy. Those who are elected, the common masses, poorer section, intellectual, are inable, cannot win the election or cannot the contest. Rule, regulation are formed to the benefit of them. In this unjust society, it is not a question of who is ruling. It is not a question of a mistake of a government. It is a question of raising the voice for the poorer section of the society. Otherwise, the rule regulation will gradually benefit the richer section of the society, depriving the common masses of the society. As a researcher, intellectual, it is not, I am not telling whether you support any government or oppose any government. I am not telling you criticize any particular minister or oppose anything, but you always interpret whoever rules, whether of any party, any person. If I made minister, you have to criticize me, because when I become minister, I have to cater to the interest the way I have become minister. So as a academician, intellectual, researcher, we have to think in that way. Otherwise, society will become vulnerable. Inequality will grow. You see how the society is deteriorating, how the mindset of people have changed. The society is equating life with wealth, property, assets. Society is not equating life with knowledge, capability. GDP does not take account the well-being of the society. GDP is just an indicator of economic activities. In Human Development Index, Human Happiness Index, in every index, India is abysmally placed. We have to think of the future. If we amass wealth, if the society is corrupted, polluted, soiled, our life living will not be easy. Our people, our children, our relation will go outside. If the society is corrupted, they will face the problem. Today we will feel sense of trepidation when people go to outside. We fear the accident, disease, dreaded disease. There is environment pollution. We cannot think of the because it is Bharat 2047. We do not know what will happen tomorrow. Corona has taught us how life is uncertain, how people are suffering today. So as intellectual people, we have got a responsibility toward the society. We have got a responsibility to the institution, because the money on which we move on the road, the money, the hospital we go, the school, college where we read, all are built on the money of the poorer section of society who pays tax heavily through indirect tax. So we have a responsibility towards primarily first, because we have to, our parents have aspiration upon us. We have to fulfill this. Similarly, we have to fulfill the aspiration of society. We have to tell about the poorer section masses of the society. If society become unequal, unjust, the growth does not becoming inclusive, then whatever wealth we may have, we may not enjoy a decent qualitative life. Life does not mean only amassing wealth, higher qualification, or earning huge money. Life means having independence. Life means a decent life. Life means telling, criticizing powerful. Life means mixing with others. Life means doing some others. Life means have a decent qualitative life. This should be our motto. As a research scholar, this is my views, that you must carry this way. You must perform. You must also fulfill the aspiration of the people. Never I don't take any support of any political party as a student, but interpret everything, whoever rules, in a pro-people angle. That is my views. With this, I conclude my thesis. I thank you, organizer. I thank you, your institution, for giving me a chance to share my thoughts and emotions, feeling. Thank you. Namaste.